towards the evening, but some showers will continue in the north. And that is how your weather is shaping up for this Bank Holiday Monday.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Mercy Moroki, and Inaya Falarin Iman. We're on your TV, radio and online.
We're here with you until midday, getting straight to the point of the biggest stories and getting the answers you need from our expert guests.
Yes, and we would like to hear your opinions as well throughout the show, so make sure you get in touch. Our usual email is gbviews@gbnews.uk. We will try and get to as many views as we can throughout the programme. But first, here's your latest headlines.
Good morning, it's coming up to 2 minutes past 10. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date on GB News. NASA is making its final preparations ahead of a planned launch of its new moon rocket later today. The unmanned rocket is the world's most powerful to date. It's going to propel a test capsule called Orion far from Earth into the moon's orbit. Well, the Artemis 1 mission's aiming to prove that people can go to the moon for longer and more sustainably than ever before. The rocket's scheduled to take off from the Kennedy Space Centre just after 1:30 this afternoon. Of course, we'll bring that to you here live. Now, in the final week of campaigning in the Conservative leadership contest, Liz Truss's team says she favours targeted support to ease the cost of living crisis. However, the Tory leadership candidate says she's not ruling anything out. Ms Truss also said it wouldn't be right to announce her entire plan before she's seen the full Whitehall analysis. Well, Global Chief Executive of the market research company Ipsos, Ben Page, says the Foreign Secretary's under pressure.
Public now wants to see more action and more spending, which of course seems to go against the grain of some of the things that Liz Truss, the most likely winner of the competition to become the next Prime Minister inside the Conservative Party, she's slightly against the grain of the things that she says she stands for. But she's probably going to be forced to do it when she turns her attention from the small number of people who are, of course, choosing the leader of the Conservative Party to the electorate as a whole.
Well, the Environment Minister and Team Rishi supporter Victoria Prentice told us that the former Chancellor believes help should go to those who need it the most.
Rishi's plan is very much to target that help at the most vulnerable households. So, for example, pensioner households or people with disabilities or households on the lowest incomes. And I think that's the right way to go. I know this is hard for everybody, but for some people it's really hard, and we need to help them get through it.
The International Atomic Energy Agency says the safety and security of Europe's biggest nuclear facility must be protected. An inspection team from the UN's nuclear watchdog is on its way to Ukraine to investigate a Russian-occupied power plant in the south of the country. Ukraine's President Zelensky called for an assessment of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant over fears of an accident there amid intense fighting. Pakistan is appealing for international support as severe flooding in the country has killed more than 1,000 people. The country's foreign minister is requesting financial help and aid from the United Nations member states. Unusually heavy monsoon rains have caused floods in both the north and south of the country, destroying farmland, crops and impacting more than 30 million people.
They're absolutely devastating. I haven't seen any destruction or devastation of this scale. I find it very difficult to put into words the phraseologies that we're used to, whether it's monsoon rains or flooding, doesn't quite seem to encapsulate the ongoing devastation and disaster that we're still witnessing.
The Royal Navy's largest warship has broken down overnight off the south coast of the UK shortly after it embarked for exercises in the US. HMS Prince of Wales left from Portsmouth Naval Base on Saturday before an emerging mechanical issue occurred. The 65,000-tonne vessel's departure had already been delayed on Friday because of a technical issue. Newspaper editors have raised concerns over police guidance that instructs their officers to declare any relationships with a journalist. The guidance, which hasn't been released publicly, advises officers to declare any links in the same way they would with a criminal. The advice was issued by College of Policing a number of years ago, but has only recently come to light. The Society of Editors have warned it equates journalists with the wrongdoing and corruption they seek to uncover. It's up to each force in England and Wales now whether they should follow the guidance. Unions are looking to launch coordinated strikes across multiple industries this autumn as they increase pressure over demands for higher pay. The idea is going to be discussed at next month's Trades Union Congress. The Observer reports that the country's two biggest unions, Unison and Unite, back the plan. It follows claims by union officials that the government is doing little or nothing to help workers struggling with mounting bills. Wizz Air was the worst airline for flight delays from the UK airports last year, according to analysis by the Civil Aviation Authority. The Hungarian carrier operates short-haul flights from 10 airports, including Belfast International, Cardiff, Edinburgh and Gatwick. In 2021, its UK departures were an average of 14 minutes and 24 seconds behind schedules. TUI Airways was second worst, with an average delay of just over 13 minutes. This is GB News. I'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's head back to the point.
Good morning. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Mercy Moroki, and I'm joined by Inaya Falarin Iman today. We're on your TV, radio and online, and here's what's coming up.
Yes, well, nearly half of Conservative voters support the renationalisation of Britain's energy industry, according to a new poll from YouGov. So what are the Tory leadership candidates going to do about it? We'll be finding out in just a moment.
Meanwhile, latest Home Office figures show that more than 25,000 migrants have crossed the Channel so far this year, with some criminal smugglers even offering Black Friday sales to Albanian migrants who want to make the illegal crossing. Well, we'll be asking what the new Prime Minister intends to do about it.
And finally, today is the final day of the Notting Hill Carnival, the first to take place since 2019. We have a look at its significance and ask whether the negative impacts are overblown. That's towards the end of this hour.
That's all coming up on today's programme and much more as well. So you can get in touch with your views because we will be reading them throughout the show. gbviews@gbnews.uk is the email.
Now, nearly half of Tory voters want to nationalise the power industry, according to a new YouGov poll.
Yes, well, the poll found that 47% of Conservative voters wanted energy companies to return to public ownership, days after Ofgem announced they will increase the energy price cap by 80% to just over £3,500.
But what are the party leadership candidates Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak going to do about these poll results? Here to help us find out is political commentator James Melville. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I guess a lot of people would say that nationalisation is a left-wing policy, but has the situation now got so bad that we're rethinking those political dynamics, and actually it could be the Tories that forward a nationalisation agenda?
I think so, yeah. I mean, basically, one of the main problems about this is the government, not just this government, but previous governments have been asleep at the wheel for decades on our energy strategy. And it's led to a perfect storm right now. I think there is a discussion, a national conversation that has to be made about the prospect of renationalising a form of energy, or maybe utilities generally, that can compete in the marketplace. It could be run under private means, but effectively allowing consumers to get subsidised rates. I think there needs to be a discussion about that. There's too many issues right now that are governments basically papering over the cracks, short-termism, and we need governments to think decades into the future, not just about pricing, but also about energy supply and where that comes from. You know, we've had a lot of policies over the last few years that are literally short-termism, and I think the public now expect our government to do what they're supposed to do and serve the best interests of the people, not just in the short term, but in the long term. And part of that discussion should be a discussion about the merits or otherwise of renationalising. I think that will allow effectively a form of control and regulation over the entire industry, but it has to be a model that is right for this day and age, not something that was seen in the past in terms of the problems with nationalised industries. Now, I think what should happen with this is that we need our Tory leadership candidates and our government to be on top of this issue. We've known about this energy crisis, not just in terms of supply, but also price and the cost of living crisis for months, and yet the government haven't done anything about it. They've been on holiday, Parliament's been shut, they've had a leadership contest, and yet they've not come up with tangible solutions to try and lower the price and also have a long-term strategy.
Yeah, and somebody who might agree that perhaps while Liz Truss in particular does not have a long-term strategy, is Rishi Sunak. He said that the 5-point cut in the rate of VAT, which is touted as something Liz Truss is looking at, he said this would cost £39 billion and would benefit higher income households. The director of the Institute for Fiscal Studies has said Truss would completely crash the finances. Is Liz Truss's short-termism going to come around and bite her in a couple of years? Because if these figures are stark, £39 billion of what it would cost.
Well, possibly. I mean, I'm always a little bit sceptical about, government's been told to balance the books, considering that we have a national debt that is north of £2 trillion. So compared to the money that was put into the economy to basically protect individuals and furlough and so over the 2-year period of COVID, and then going back obviously to the financial crash of 2008, 2009, and the rampant printing of money through quantitative easing, which is now about 500 billion. I think basically to say that governments can't protect their own through reduced pricing or to reduced taxation, I'm not really buying that at the moment. I think there needs to be a policy, not just on energy strategy, but there needs to be a policy on taxation that gets people through this crisis. Because the figures that they're quoting at the moment in terms of the energy price cap are off the scale. It's not just for households. It's also for businesses as well. There isn't a cap on prices for businesses. And you're facing a knock-on effect with businesses, whether it's hospitality or farming or leisure, cinemas. They're not going to be able to afford these costs, and therefore that has a knock-on effect with employment. People are going to lose their jobs over this. So the debate has to be widened not just about households, but also in terms of business as well. And yet we've got governments who are throwing some figures around and trying to paper over the cracks, but they need something that basically lessens the pressure for consumers, households and businesses over the next few months. But at the same time, we need to have a strategy that thinks long-term to reduce pricing for decades to come, plus getting the right energy supply.
And James, isn't that fundamentally the point? Because when we talk about nationalisation and building new nuclear power plants and fracking, ultimately these are things that take decades. And even though this crisis is years in the making, we have a problem right now where next year, for example, prices of energy for the average household is set to rise by potentially more than £6,000. What could be done to alleviate, in your view, the crisis that households are facing right now?
Yeah, I mean, the crisis right now is an economic thing. So it's in terms of reductions of taxation. I mean, with Sunak increasing national insurance is hardly providing a solution to the problem. So there needs to be almost tax breaks right now. Then there's obviously the grant initiative they're proposing with £400 for households. But if you're going to do that, then you also have to align that with maybe a cut in VAT, cut in national insurance, maybe even a cut of income tax. It's almost like having an emergency budget that puts households and businesses first. So that's the economic solution in the short term. The long-term solution is obviously a bigger picture stuff about energy pricing generally and also the form of energy supply. But the two do go hand in hand, because part of the reason that we're in this crisis is the governments haven't had an energy strategy in place for decades.
I want to move on to something else that's in the papers this morning in the Times. A story about Liz Truss, when she becomes Prime Minister, will declare China an official threat. This would be for the first time. What do you make of this?
Well, I mean, I think, it's based on the manoeuvrings around Taiwan. I can understand why that has happened, but fundamentally, what does that mean? I mean, we've got to be a sort of careful balance to making sure that oppressive regimes don't go further and further and further in terms of how they're oppressing their own people or possibly threatening other countries. So I understand why she's done that. But again, all I'm getting from our candidates is just empty rhetoric. And I know the candidates are saying basically we can't say too much about what all that definition is until they actually, they become Prime Minister. But wouldn't it be great to actually have politicians who do put visions in place? Liz Truss and Sunak have been politicians for a long time. What is their ideology? It's not just the China issue, it's on everything. What is their core ideology? How are they going to fix the problems, not just in this country, but globally, now and into the future? We're just getting politicians who are saying things for the sake of saying it, rather than actually people look at them and think, well, actually, I know what their ideology stands for. It does seem short-termism. I understand why she's done it over China, but what's the definition behind that?
Well, James Melville, thank you for joining us this morning to look into all those stories, including those big energy stories that I'm sure we won't stop speaking about for months to come. James Melville there, a political commentator. I think it's really, people keep forgetting, actually, that businesses don't have this price cap. And I found two particularly stark examples when I was reading The Guardian, which, yes, I do read sometimes. A hotel in Aberdeen apparently says it will be cheaper to close for the winter than heat the rooms for guests, so it will be forced to close. A fish and chip shop in Shropshire says the annual energy bills there have risen from £9,000 to £35,000. And, of course, this is important because that has repercussions. They can't keep operating as normal businesses and keep people on the payrolls if their bills are so astronomical, and if they literally are forced to close. So these things are going to have knock-on effects, and perhaps maybe it is time to consider a cap for businesses. I don't know. I don't know what the answers are.
Well, I think James Melville touched on a really important point, is how do we move beyond rhetoric and actually to action? And I don't know if any of the candidates really have grappled with the scale of the problem. We're talking about 300-400% increases in people's bills when people are already tightening their budgets and struggling to get through the times that we're living in right now. And do any of them have a plan to really address not just the immediate problems that he rightfully raised, but the long-term problems in terms of a lack of ideas, lack of political will to actually get to the root cause of the issues and deal with them? So whether or not any of the candidates are really going to grapple with these really serious fundamental issues, I think, is an open question.
Well, I mean, I think Liz Truss has to. Assuming she's going to win, which all polls indicate she will, in about a week. Is it a week now? Yeah, next Monday.
Feels like it's
we should find out. If she wins, she's going to have to do more than rhetoric, isn't she? Because she'll actually have to step up to the plate and put her money where her mouth is. But let us know what you want to hear from the future Prime Minister, because do you think these cash payments, which Liz Truss isn't a massive fan of, she's not a big fan of just sort of these universal cash payments to households, do you think that is what you need, or what else are you looking for? Because people are going to have to make up a £2,000 shortfall based on this time next year in their energy bills. They're going to have to look for that somewhere. So let us know, gbviews@gbnews.uk. Tell us what you want to hear.
Yes, well, after the break, as the number of channel crossing migrants in the UK hits 25,000 for the year to date, we'll ask a former Border Force chief whether it will likely hit 50,000 by Christmas. That's after the weather.
The UK is looking mostly dry and sunny, although a few showers will develop, mainly in the north. Let's take a look at the details. Well, it will be a largely sunny afternoon across the southwest, although a brisk easterly breeze will develop, especially over the moors and along the coast. Temperatures will be around the low 20s. Southeastern England and East Anglia will also see a keen breeze, which will bring in a fair bit of cloud off the North Sea. The north of Wales may see the odd shower this afternoon, but much of the country will be dry with the best of the sun in the west. The Midlands then will see a dry bank holiday afternoon, but there will be a fair bit of cloud around, especially in the east. Despite this, temperatures will remain in the low 20s. North East England is to have a rather cloudy afternoon with perhaps the odd spot of rain around. Pop over the Pennines though, as North West England will be dry with some sunshine. Western Scotland will also see some spells of sunshine this afternoon, but further east it will be cloudier. A few showers may also develop, especially over the higher ground. Northern Ireland then may also see the odd shower develop, but most will miss them and have a dry afternoon with some spells of sunshine. Temperatures here reaching 18 to 20 Celsius. Cloud will then melt away as we move towards the evening, but some showers will continue in the north, and that is how your weather is shaping up for this Bank Holiday Monday.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
A very good morning. The time's 10:22 in just a few seconds. And this is To The Point with myself, Mercy Moreki, and Inaya Falarin Iman. We're on GB News and we're live on your TV, online and radio.
Yes, well, more than 25,000 channel migrants have crossed into the UK this year, according to the latest Home Office figures.
Yes, well, the government had hoped the warning would deter would-be channel crossers, but with people smugglers on TikTok offering Black Friday deals over the weekend, it's clearly not working, is it?
Yes, well, former Chief Immigration Officer for the UK Border Force at Calais, Kevin Saunders, joins us now. Thank you for joining us, Kevin. I mean, the Rwanda plan, that was meant to be the big issue that completely changed the migrant channel crossings. Several months later, we are still seeing numbers exponentially increase.
We are indeed, and the numbers are going to go up. I think we can't be too critical of the Rwanda plan because we haven't really given it a chance yet because of the legal challenges. And of course, we have the judicial review next week. So we'll see whether our courts think it's legal or not. What I do know is that notices have already served on people that are eligible to be removed to Rwanda. So if the judicial review goes in the government's favour, then these people can be removed straight away. Now, whether that will have a knock-on on the people coming across the channel or not, we will have to see.
I want to talk about a couple of stories that have come out over the last couple of weeks about TikTok, the social networking, social platform giant Chinese company. People are exploiting that company and that platform to basically sell these crossings to mainly Albanian migrants. Now, some figures came out a few weeks ago saying that 40% of people who crossed were from Albania. Do you think we should probably be focusing on that problem specifically for now, this issue of Albanian migrants, and perhaps do something with the Albanian government? Because 40% is a huge chunk and we could potentially deal with that part first.
Yes, we can and we have. We have signed an agreement with the Albanian government, their Minister of the Interior, to get these people removed back to Albania. And what we have is the Albanian government are actually sending to the UK some Albanian police officers, border guards, I'm not quite sure which, but they are coming to the UK to help our people identify these Albanians, and then we will be able to remove them rapidly. They won't go through the asylum process because they're not eligible to claim asylum. They're deemed as inadmissible for asylum. So that would mean that we can remove them very, very quickly, and the Albanians are on side for this. So I do expect to see some movement on this very, very quickly.
And also, Kevin, what about our relationship with France? Some people were quite critical of Liz Truss recently when she said that the jury was out, essentially, whether or not France was a very close friend. But there is a point to be made there in relation to the fact that, Calais to the UK is the journey that many of these people are taking, and they are being allowed, effectively, to do that journey to the tunes of thousands, tens of thousands of people.
Well, I've just had a holiday in France, and I absolutely love the French. I think the French people are very, very nice. My problem is with the French government, particularly with Mr. Macron, who doesn't really seem to have been working with us, perhaps in the most constructive manner. To call the Prime Minister a buffoon is not really very diplomatic. So when Miss Truss gets in, if she does, her first job is to mend the fences with the French and see if we can get them on board to do something about the migrants leaving France. The trouble with the French is that they always want something in return. So they're going to want something on Northern Ireland or fishing or something like that. So we have to negotiate with them.
Well, Kevin, it's always great to have you to discuss this issue. Thank you for joining us, former Chief Immigration Officer for the UK Border Force there. Well, I mean, at least they make great bread and cheese, eh, the French?
Yeah, I do love the French. I mean, at the end of the day, they do take way more people than we do. And I do think that...
Yeah, but that's
not necessarily a reason for us to take more people. But I think that we can't be too critical of them. In my personal view, I think we need to sort out our system.
Yeah, sure, but they're not an island nation, are they? So, that's almost a product of sort of bordering lots of other countries where the flow of migration is inevitable, some would say.
But the reality is, for example, in the year to 2022 June, nearly 14,000 people were granted asylum in the UK. And I'm sceptical that all of those people are genuine asylum seekers. So even those that arrive into the UK, the likelihood of them getting asylum after a few months is still quite high.
Yeah, so I think it's 60%,
exactly.
Near 70% is the rate.
When we know that when we look at the top countries, they're not necessarily Syria and Iraq. A lot of them are Iran, Albania, as you mentioned. So even the ones that we do have control over in terms of the system, we are failing.
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting what you mentioned there about since the Rwanda plan, because I have the exact figure here, 19,000, or the latest figure, 19,878 have arrived in the UK since the Rwanda plan was unveiled. So that's 20,000 more people. So the plan in and of itself clearly was not a deterrent. It will only become a deterrent once they see that the government is actually going to do something take some action rather than just the words, I suppose.
Yeah. The legal challenges are going to continue, I'm sure.
Yes, and that'll be a challenge for the next Prime Minister.
Indeed.
But let us know what you think about all of that. GBviews at gbnews.uk. We will be getting to some of your views very shortly, but after the break, we'll also give you everything you need to know about the bank holiday travel today. That's all after these headlines with Rosie.
Good morning, it is 10:29. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date on GB News. A leak of liquid hydrogen has interrupted NASA's preparations for its new moon rocket launch. Fueling was halted this morning, but NASA says its engineers are working to fix the problem. These are live pictures we're showing you. It's not known if that leak is going to cause any delay to the takeoff that's scheduled from the Kennedy Space Center in Cape Canaveral in Florida. The unmanned rocket is the world's most powerful to date. It's going to propel a test capsule called Orion far from Earth into the moon's orbit. The Artemis 1 mission's aiming to prove that people can go to the moon for longer and more sustainably than ever before. It is scheduled to take off just after 1:30 here. If everything goes to plan, we will keep you up to date and bring you the takeoff here. Now, in other news, Liz Truss's campaign says that she favours targeted support to ease the cost of living crisis rather than help for all. The Tory leadership candidate, though, says she's not ruling anything out as the contest enters its final week. Well, the Environment Minister and Team Rishi supporter, Victoria Prentice, told us the former Chancellor believes help should go to those who need it the most.
Rishi's plan is very much to target that help at the most vulnerable households. So, for example, pensioner households or people with disabilities or households on the lowest incomes. And I think that's the right way to go. I know this is hard for everybody, but for some people it's really hard, and we need to help them get through it.
The International Atomic Energy Agency says the safety and security of Europe's biggest nuclear facility must be protected. An inspection team from the UN's nuclear watchdog is on its way to Ukraine to investigate the Russian-occupied Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant. Ukraine's President Zelensky called for an assessment over fears of a nuclear accident amid intense fighting. The Royal Navy's largest warship has broken down overnight off the south coast of the UK shortly after embarking for exercises in the US. HMS Prince of Wales left from Portsmouth Naval Base on Saturday when what they say was a mechanical issue occurred. The 65,000-tonne vessel's departure had already been delayed on Friday because of a technical issue. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel, And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning, it's 10:33 and this is To The Point with Inaya Falarin Iman and myself, Mercy Moroki, on GB News. We're live on your TV, online and radio.
The AA has issued an amber travel warning for today as people travel back from their bank holiday getaways.
Yes, well, this warning means motorists should be prepared to expect delays, congestion and other issues on their journeys.
Well, we're joined now by Ellie Costello. She's on the A1 near the M25 at Porter's Bar in Hertfordshire. And Ellie, how's it looking at the moment? Tell us more.
Well, good morning to you both and happy Bank Holiday Monday, but might not be happy for everyone because the bank holiday is often synonymous with sitting in your car for a really long time, stuck in a traffic jam. And it's not looking too bad at the moment. I want to try not to look down. I'm not great with heights, but it's not looking too bad at the moment. But the general advice is if you need to get home today, if you've been away for the bank holiday and you're heading home today, do it before lunchtime because that is when the traffic is going to pick up. There's this amber traffic warning from the AA. They're saying that 45% of UK drivers have hit the road for a leisure trip at some point this weekend. That means almost half of us have been on the roads this weekend. Many people making the journey home today after the bank holiday weekend. It's going to be busy. 1.3 million car journeys are going to take place today alone, and the hotspots are going to be those roads up from Cornwall to Bath to Bristol to London, and also leaving seaside resorts. We know already that the M5 leaving Weston-super-Mare is already partially blocked due to a car crash there. So do check before you travel and leave plenty of time if you're out and about on the roads this weekend and today especially. And that amber traffic warning is only the second one ever, and that is partly due to the amazing weather that we've had this weekend. It's been warm, it's been sunny, but there's also been so many events that have taken place over the August bank holiday weekend, including Notting Hill Festival in North London, Reading and Leeds Festival, the Edinburgh Fringe is coming to a close as well, and there's been football matches and cricket matches. So all of those people are heading back today, and that is just one of the reasons why the amber traffic warning is in place today. If you are watching or listening to us from abroad, then I hope you've had a lovely holiday. But if you are flying back into the UK, then do check before you travel, because 900 inbound flights to the UK have been cancelled from Friday until tomorrow. Now, if that affects you, then you are probably aware of that. But if your flight is still taking off, make sure you leave plenty of time to get through security as people are heading back this weekend and today, because school is starting this week for so many people and the airports are going to be busy. Some light at the end of the tunnel, if you will, though. The train looks pretty good today. 95% of national rail routes are running smoothly today. No strike action, you'll be glad to hear, but there are some engineering works taking place, so do check before you travel on some routes because some of them have been affected. But the general advice is leave plenty of time if you are out and about travelling today. If you're hitting the roads, do so before lunchtime if you can, and do pack snacks and water as well if you are stuck in a traffic jam.
Well, Ellie, thank you for that update. Really useful. See you later. And get home safe. I hope you do manage to get home. Joining us now to give us a wider update on travel disruption is travel editor at The Independent and friend of the channel, Simon Calder. Nice to see you. I feel like I haven't seen you in a while. I do want to kick off with a view that we just got here by John B, who says, are we all really so pathetic that we need to be issued with a warning from the AA to tell us the roads are busy on bank holidays? How ludicrous.
I do think there will be a lot of sympathy with that view. Of course, it is pretty much always the same. I mean, great that Ellie could bring us up to date on the problems, particularly short-term problems like at Weston-super-Mare. But yes, I mean, there are always, on Bank Holiday Monday, going to be long queues in from Cornwall, from Devon, lots of congestion leaving the Lake District, particularly going southbound, and the M25. Who could ever forget the particularly the quadrant from the M40 for Oxford and Heathrow around to the M23 for Gatwick, and also over towards the Dartford crossing. So yes, it's a mess. But most of it is fairly predictable. And those 900 cancellations that Ellie mentioned, most of them notified in advance in the skies. But we have got some short-term cancellations, which are, of course, the much more annoying kind. So EasyJet facing industrial action in both Portugal and in Spain. Wow. They've cancelled so far at least a dozen flights between Portugal and the UK, and they've also cancelled a couple of round trips from Palma in Mallorca, holiday favourite, of course, to Gatwick. Now, the big problem is, if you're heading out to those destinations, there will be plenty of space on other flights, other airlines. Coming back in, everything is pretty stretched, so that could be a problem, and those passengers could end up being rerouted via Paris or Amsterdam or somewhere else to get them home.
And which will be the busiest airports then, if there is going to be challenges with some of the flights?
Yeah, well, of course, getting on a flight to the UK, your problems are only just beginning, because then you've got to arrive. Well, I've got the latest figures on that, and Luton and Stansted are both predicting, they are two of the top 5 airports in the UK, along with Manchester, Heathrow and Gatwick. They're both predicting that today is going to be the busiest inbound day. Really? Now, I went through this on Saturday coming into Heathrow, and the main problem is, I mean, the flight was actually on time, but then it's the ground handling on arrival. UK Border Force wasn't too bad at all, but then you sit around for an hour. And you've also been covering on GBNews earlier the long delays that people have been facing with Wizz Air at the top of the league. But that, the average day of 15 minutes, I think most of us on a bank holiday Monday would take a 15-minute delay. We count that as a victory.
So tell us when, because, I feel like for the best part of a year we've been talking about all the travel disruption and many of the times it's been with you. And before, of course, there was COVID and there was all the rules around that. Lots of people would say we've pretty much got back to normal life in all other aspects, but not in travel. No. When can they expect to get back to normal when it comes to travel?
Well, it all depends how you define normal, Mercy. Because, of course, we're living in a new world. We're living in a post-Brexit world, and that is having some very significant implications. So the biggest problems, actually, I found today are at Calais, and that is motorists coming back into the UK at the end of their holidays. Irish Ferries just warned 3-hour delays for completing formalities. Now, that is very significant because since Brexit, it is now, previously, anybody who's familiar with Calais or Dover will know that you've got UK Border Force controls there, and you would just wade through. The French didn't care whether you were leaving or not. Now, because of Brexit, we asked for them to care. We asked for them to stamp every passport, check every passport, and that is why you were getting very severe queues building up at Calais. Just at the start of the summer, you'll recall we had very long queues at Dover as well. So, there is a new normal, and it hasn't quite settled down yet. But I'd say probably, the ferry issues are going to be the ones which will be the most challenging. And of course, last week we had Eurostar saying they're not even going to bother to serve Ebbsfleet or Ashford International stations in Kent until at least 2025 because of the extra bureaucracy to do with Brexit.
And just very quickly, I mean, have any of the leadership candidates said anything that you think do good for the travel industry or fellow travellers?
That's such a good question. I've been studying every single word. I've got a prescription of what I think they need to do to make travel easier for people. And they've not said
They need to hire you.
Well, I am a
Get rid of Grant Shapps.
Well, I'm sure the Transport Secretary, he obviously expects that he will still be the Transport Secretary, and I'll leave that. But of course, I'm here to try to help. But I am already working on a list of here's the things you've really got to tackle to improve the travel experience for British citizens, because at the moment it's well below par.
Yes, well, Simon, thank you very much. Hope to see you again.
So nice to see you.
Now, let's move on to something else. Interesting topic, this, because we're completely on different sides of the argument here. The Notting Hill Carnival, I'm sure you would have noticed it's been taking place, and it's continuing today, this bank holiday Monday, after kicking off over the weekend.
Yes, I must admit, I was at the Notting Hill Carnival yesterday, and it is Europe's biggest street party. It returned for the first time since 2019, after the event was cancelled twice due to the pandemic.
Yes, well, the carnival usually attracts around 2 million party goers, and one party goer who was there over the weekend, other than Inaya, was our next guest, showbiz reporter Stephanie Tecci. Good morning, Stephanie. I have not been to Carnival this time or any other time, and I'm very reluctant to go because you do see these images and it just looks sweaty and there's too many people and it looks like trouble. People are starting trouble. Is that the wrong impression that I have of Carnival?
Yes, it is, Mercy, and I tend to blame this on the media. You know, Carnival is now in its 56th year, and it's a staple part of London life. It's a celebration of diversity, inclusion, but specifically for the African Caribbean community. It's their chance to express this culture in the streets of London. So when you're there, you get that vibe and you get that feeling. But Mercy, someone like yourself who hasn't attended, when you see the pictures and what you see in the news is you see the violence, you see the arrest, you see all the revellers all around on the streets, and that's to be expected at any festival. What really bugs me about the coverage for Notting Hill Festival is it always feels like it gets criminalised, and that's not what this is about. It's a celebration of Londoners coming together, and also it's a fight for justice, you know, for the racial inequality that used to happen in the 60s. We celebrate that is now coming to an end, but also stuff like Grenfell, we don't hear about it on the news unless it's in the anniversary. When you go to Notting Hill, where it was right near where it happened, you get that reflection there. It's marked. So Notting Hill is also a political statement beyond the parties.
Definitely. I mean, I'd have to say that I completely agree with you. And to be fair, I shared a lot of Mercy's concerns. I had never been before yesterday. That was the first time that I had been. And obviously, when you read a lot of the reports, you hear about violence and criminality and many of the things that you talked about. But actually, when I went there, it was pretty much just a big festival of reggae music and Afro beats and things like that. And I do think that history that you touched upon is really important because it was created as a response to deteriorating racial tensions in the 1960s. And it was a way to bring the kind of Afro-Caribbean community closer with the kind of white British community at the time, and has really become something that is a global attractor for the country. So do you think there's anything that we can do to try and reclaim that image of Notting Hill Carnival so that it isn't misrepresented?
Well, I think it's just the media getting on board and actually going there themselves and experiencing it for itself. It just feels like, you know, anytime there is like a big black festival, there's always that link to violence, and that image needs to be shared. And that is a big part of the media, actually just selling those kind of images as well. More than anything about the festival and the party, this is a great chance for the London economy. Like, Carnival boosts so much money just over the 2 days it's on towards the London economy. I think I read it was almost up to like £270 million, which is raised from all of Carnival. So to kind of put that in a bad light for a capital which is currently going through the cost of living crisis, it leaves a bitter taste in my mouth. And Mercy, I say you haven't lived until you've gone to Notting Hill Carnival.
To say we just had Simon Calder on, a travel expert, a minute ago, and just before you came on, and as he was leaving, he said, "Oh, you have to go. It's brilliant." So I'll take Simon's word for it.
But one thing that I guess, do we have to be honest as well? The reality is, though, as it descends into the evening, I was told by many people that had been that it does become sometimes quite unsafe, and actually there are people that go there looking for trouble in ways that you may not find in other kind of mass events. So is there also things that people that support the festival and enjoy it have to recognise to make sure that it is safe and secure for all types of people?
I do agree with that. It's one of those things, even me, I've been going to Carnival for so many years, but I know that when it gets after 6, I know that's potentially there's room for a fight, or that's when things are really going to kick off. So in that sense, like anywhere you go in life, you have to have your wits about you. But the more you go to Carnival, you know where to avoid, you know what things will kind of be potential trouble spot areas, you know, kind of stay safe with your family, or, you know, keep your phone with you tight. It's like anywhere you go, you just have to keep your wits about you and not be gullible and think all is well. You know, this is, you know, I saw so many police yesterday, and it's like they were active, but then I see so many people walk around smoking cannabis and all that stuff. So again, it's just for you to find one spot where you can enjoy the festivities.
Well, Stephanie, I don't know if I'm convinced just yet, but I'll think about it in a year's time. Stephanie Techi, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Showbiz reporter.
Just quickly, we have one of the GB views about agreeing with you. I completely agree with you, Mercy. Why would anyone want to go to something like this? It's just full of lunatics. Well,
it is. That's how I see it. Also, I just don't like crowds, just generally. I was telling you now this morning, I've never been to any kind of music festival either, because I just don't want to be squished in like 500,000 24-year-olds.
It does get
sweating and on drugs probably. Why would I want to put myself through that? I like my comfort. That's what I like.
Well, fair enough.
And did you see? Can we play that image again? Of there was. Images that came out over the weekend of people at the festival dancing on top of a bus shelter. About, I don't know, how many would you say there were? There may be 8, 10 maybe people dancing on top of a bus shelter, and then it just collapses.
Oh, there's always a risk of that when you have big events.
Yeah, but that's
we already have
damage.
Health and safety gone mad in this country.
don't encourage them further. Yeah, but no, we wouldn't condone people randomly 10 people dancing on a bus shelter on any other day. Surely we can't just say, oh well, it's Carnival, so we'll allow it for one day.
Well, I want to ask why the bus shelter cannot hold a bunch of people on top of it.
You'd make a good lawyer, eh? Let us know what you think. Am I being a bit too much of a an old woman?
Party pooper.
Yeah, party pooper. By saying it's just a bit too much for me, or actually, do I have a point? gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Well, the Ould Lammas Fair is one of the oldest events of its kind in Britain and is back after 2 years of pandemic restrictions.
Yes, well, our Northern Ireland reporter Dougie Beattie has been in Ballycastle over the weekend to take a look at the opening day.
It's been running from the 1700s, and after 3 years' absence, the Lammas Fair returns with some modern twists. A fair that saw the end of the harvest and gave those in agriculture a chance to trade workers, animals and goods. It brought financial rewards to the area, and Mayor Ivor Wallace is sure that it still does.
It brings millions to the local economy. I mean, it's so important for this area. You know, not only for the local traders, but far wider than that. There's people coming to stay in the local area. So the Causeway Coast and Glens, they're staying in Portrush, Portstewart, Coleraine, they're travelling into Ballycastle. As well as that, just the local traders, the food suppliers, the food wholesalers, right down then to the vendors who will be here selling their wares at the fair.
Although foreign travellers are returning, it seems to be those who stayed at home during the pandemic that are helping local business.
There's a lot of people who maybe for the first time done staycations and they didn't realise what they had on their doorstep, and now they're coming back again and again. Foreign travel has certainly started to come back as well. There's quite a lot of Americans about again, and they're the ones that seem to spend £1. So yeah, I think this area has done fairly well.
The fair now stretches over 4 days, and day one was all about horse trading, with animals being paraded through the town, then raced on the beach. and Joan Laverty has introduced us to her special friend.
Oh, the Lammas Fair is great. Great for Ballycastle town. This is Albert. He's a big Belgian draft. He's 13 years old. And everybody we've been talking to today wants him to win.
It is hard not to see the beauty of the Antrim coast, but as the summer comes to an end, we will await to see how many events give the public purse a worthwhile return. Doogie BD, GB News, Ballycastle.
Well, now let's end the hour with some of the lighter stories of the day that you might have missed.
Yes, well, the Finnish Prime Minister Sanna Marin was found partying as videos emerged on social media of the 36-year-old drinking and dancing at a private venue.
Yes, well, you might recall that this led to a national outcry, leading to, well, it wasn't a national outcry. I would say her opponents got a bit upset about it. It led to the Prime Minister doing a drug test following political pressure, but the test did come back negative, and she also had to apologise after a photo emerged of two topless women kissing at her summer palace. So the question we're asking is, how much should a Prime Minister get to party?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I think absolutely not. I mean, I think that she's one of the youngest, I think, if not the youngest, Prime Minister, head of state in the entire world. I mean, I just think it does a lot of damage for young women who want to be taken seriously in politics. If it just seems that when you attain even the most highest office, where you have standards that are expected, which you carry the representation of the nation globally, when you're out drinking, partying, doing whatever you want, is it so much to ask when you hold that position to just actually
reel it in?
Yeah, reel it in a little bit. There's a video of Thatcher. She was asked in an interview to do a little jump to show that she was kind of down with the kids. And she said, no, she said, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, no, but isn't the problem the fact that there are those different standards in the first place? Because you see male politicians doing all sorts. I mean, you see Michael Gove out partying. Nobody bats an eyelid when Michael Gove or Boris Johnson, for example, are seen out, partying, and rightly so. They have very difficult jobs, but then if a woman was to do it, and she's 30-something, I mean...
The head of state, the highest office
Boris
in
Johnson
the land.
Did it?
She has no credibility, she has no stature. There's a war in Ukraine going on right now. I just think hold the office at a cost of living crisis probably there as well.
Look,
with a bit of...
I personally wouldn't. Okay, all right, at least I would do it, but I just wouldn't be caught doing it because, the problem is getting caught, isn't it? But I think, she's obviously respected. She's been democratically elected, and so she does have stature. She does have that democratic mandate, and obviously people have trust in her as an individual to be able to run the affairs of the country. So this idea that the fact that, she was out drinking and then she was dancing with her friends, I mean, is that really what's going to ruin her reputation?
I just think it's poor form. Finland is rarely in the news, and now the one time they're in the news is seeing their young
they're boring.
Prime Minister party.
I did date a Finnish man once. I can confirm they were boring. That's why we're not together anymore.
They're
just very stoic. They're very stoic, not boring. But clearly, the Finnish Prime Minister is not very stoic. But I think she should party on, I say.
I say that.
What do you think? GBViews at gbnews.uk. Well, that's it for this hour. But keep all your thoughts coming into us on gbviews at gbnews.uk, because we will be back for another hour until midday after this short break.
The UK is looking mostly dry and sunny, although a few showers will develop, mainly in the north. Let's take a look at the details. Well, it will be a largely sunny afternoon across the southwest, although a brisk easterly breeze will develop, especially over the moors and along the coast. Temperatures will be around the low 20s. Southeastern England and East Anglia will also see a keen breeze, which will bring in a fair bit of cloud off the North Sea. The north of Wales may see the odd shower this afternoon, but much of the country will be dry with the best of the sun in the west. The Midlands then will see a dry bank holiday afternoon, but there will be a fair bit of cloud around, especially in the east. Despite this, temperatures will remain in the low 20s. North East England is to have a rather cloudy afternoon with perhaps the odd spot of rain around. Pop over the Pennines though, as North West England will be dry with some sunshine. Western Scotland will also see some spells of sunshine this afternoon, but further east it will be cloudier. A few showers may also develop, especially over the higher ground. Northern Ireland then may also see the odd shower develop, but most will miss them and have a dry afternoon with some spells of sunshine. Temperatures here reaching 18 to 20 Celsius. Cloud will then melt away as we move towards the evening, but some showers will continue in the north. And that is how your weather is shaping up for this Bank Holiday Monday.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning, this is To The Point on GB News with me, Mercy Moroki and Inaya Falarin Iman. We're on your TV, radio and online.
Yes, we're with you until midday, going straight to the point of today's biggest stories with expert guests.
Yes, and make sure you get in touch with your views. We get to them throughout the show, so get them in at gbviews@gbnews.uk. But first, here's your latest headline update with Rosie.
A very good morning. It's 11 o'clock. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date on GB News. NASA is making final preparations ahead of the launch of its new moon rocket later today. Well, the Unmanned rocket is the world's most powerful to date. It's going to propel a test capsule called Orion far from the Earth into the moon's orbit. It's the Artemis 1 mission, and it's aiming to prove that people can go to the moon for longer and more sustainably than ever before. We can show you live pictures of the preparations now. Well, it's going to take off from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Engineers are working towards a 2-hour launch window that opens at 1:30. We'll bring you live coverage of that, of course, here. Now, in the final week of campaigning in the Conservative leadership contest, Liz Truss's team says she favours targeted support to ease the cost of living crisis. However, the Tory leadership candidate says she's not ruling anything out. Ms Truss also says it wouldn't be right to announce her entire plan before she's seen the full Whitehall analysis. Well, the global chief executive of market research company Ipsos, Ben Page, says the Foreign Secretary is under pressure.
Public now wants to see more action and more spending. She's slightly against the grain of the things that she says she stands for, but she's probably going to be forced to do it when she turns her attention from the small number of people who are, of course, choosing the leader of the Conservative Party to the electorate as a whole.
Environment Minister and Team Rishi supporter Victoria Prentice told us the former Chancellor believes help should go to those who need it the most.
Rishi's plan is very much to target that help at the most vulnerable households. So, for example, pensioner households or people with disabilities or households on the lowest incomes. And I think that's the right way to go. I know this is hard for everybody, but for some people it's really hard, and we need to help them get through it.
The International Atomic Energy Agency says the safety and security of Europe's biggest nuclear facility must be protected. An inspection team from the UN's nuclear watchdog is on its way to Ukraine to investigate a Russian-occupied power plant in the south of the country. Ukraine's President Zelensky called for an assessment of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant over fears amid an accident, they say, amid intense fighting. The Queen sent a message to the President of Pakistan saying she's deeply saddened by the tragic loss of life and destruction due to flooding across the country. There's been an appeal from Pakistan for more international support, as more than 1,000 people have been killed. The country's foreign minister is requesting financial help and aid from United Nations member states. Unusually heavy monsoon rains have caused floods in both the north and the south of the country, destroying farmland, crops and impacting more than 30 million people.
They're absolutely devastating. I haven't seen any destruction or devastation of this scale. I find it very difficult to put into words the phraseologies that we're used to, whether it's monsoon rains or flooding, doesn't quite seem to encapsulate the ongoing devastation and disaster that we're still witnessing.
The Royal Navy's largest warship has broken down overnight off the south coast of the UK, shortly after it embarked for exercises in the US. HMS Prince of Wales left from Portsmouth Naval Base on Saturday when a mechanical issue occurred. The 65,000-tonne vessel's departure had already been delayed because of a technical issue. Newspaper editors have raised concerns over police guidance that instructs their officers to declare any relationships with a journalist. The guidance hasn't been released publicly, but it advises officers to declare any links in the same way they would with a criminal. The advice was issued by College of Policing a number of years ago, but has only recently come to light. The Society of Editors are warning it equates journalists with the wrongdoing and corruption they seek to uncover. It's up to each force in England and Wales whether they should follow the guidance. The government has confirmed Gibraltar's status as a city more than 180 years after it was first bestowed by Queen Victoria. The title was originally awarded in 1842, but it was then left off the official list of recognised cities. Now a newly published record confirms Gibraltar's inclusion. Prime Minister Boris Johnson describes the decision as a huge accolade to its rich history and dynamism. This is GB News. I'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's head back to the point.
Good morning, this is To The Point on GB News with me, Mercy Moroki, and Inaya Falarin Iman on your TV, radio and online. The time's 11:05 and we're here for another hour, so here's what's coming up.
Our top story, with the average energy bill set to rise to more than $3,500 a year in October. The Prime Minister is under pressure to solve the cost of living crisis. New polls suggest 1 in 4 adults are planning to turn off their heating this winter. More on the story later.
Yes, and a leaked letter from the International Trade Secretary has revealed that the government has ditched plans to use its Brexit trade deals to spread and enforce human rights around the world. We'll be discussing that later on in the show.
And universities are seeking to, quote, decolonise the curriculum, with literature from Shakespeare and Austen being dropped from some courses. We'll be looking at how universities can possibly justify censoring some of history's greatest writers.
Yes, that's all coming up and much more as well over the next hour or so. And get your views in. We're going to be going to those. I have been saying that for the last hour or so, but I promise we would only be doing that. GB Views at gbnews.uk.
Now to our top story. Conservative leadership frontrunner Liz Truss is reportedly considering a slashing of VAT by 5% in order to help voters cope with the worsening cost of living crisis.
Yes, well, the current Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, if you remember him, is under increasing pressure to act to solve the cost of living crisis now, following new polling which shows nearly 1 in 4 adults plan to use their heating in a very limited way or not at all this winter.
Yes, well, let's go now to our political correspondent, Tom Harwood, who joins us now. One of the things that I worry about some of the policies that have been announced, Tom, is that really they are tinkering around the edges. Because when you look at the breakdown of what makes up a lot of our energy prices, it's so significantly wholesale prices of gas. So whilst we have spiralling gas prices internationally, a cut in 1% here, 5% there, is that really going to make the kind of fundamental difference that is going to be affecting ordinary people in the next year?
It really isn't when you look at the energy bills and the makeup of those bills. And so what the candidates, both Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss, were saying at the start of this campaign, Rishi Sunak saying taking VAT off energy bills, Liz Truss saying getting rid of those green levies, etc., that will not touch the sides now of what we're really facing in terms of these global prices and how they have been soaring on the wholesale end of things. Now, it looks like Liz Truss is going to become Prime Minister next week. If we have any sort of faith in these polls, she will. She's keeping her cards relatively close to her chest in terms of the direct support that will be offered to families, although everyone around her says that, of course, there will be more support. There is some constructive ambiguity as to what that support would be. It's interesting looking at this proposal that appeared in the Telegraph over the weekend, the 5% VAT cut, taking VAT on not just energy, but on everything, down from 20% to 15%. That is a very, very expensive policy. It costs tens of billions of pounds in lost revenue for the government. But I suppose one of the arguments in favour of it is keeping down the pressure on prices elsewhere, not just on energy bills, but on other people's outgoings, on various other goods across the wider economy. Because one of the issues in terms of how it's dealt with, how this situation of higher prices is dealt with, is that there is a genuine problem of supply and demand. Too much demand, not enough supply. A lot of people are saying that just fixing the prices, saying this is all fine, we're just going to get the state to pay for everything, well, that's not going to change people's behaviour. And ultimately, we do need behavioural changes, not just from people conserving energy where they can, but also from new entrants producing more energy. And that's what the price incentive mechanism is all about.
Yeah, on breakfast this morning with Eamon and Isabel, they were having this conversation, and Eamon was very much of the, you know, I'll do what I have to. I'll go sit in my car, I'll turn off the heating and wear a coat if I have to. And Isabel was a bit like, I don't want my kids to have to grow up where we're having to conserve energy in that way. And I agreed with Isabel because, you know, we are one of the richest nations on the globe, and, you know, historically the world has ever known. We have a massive economy. Why should people be forced to have to turn off their heating? Why should they be forced to have to sort of conserve their energy? Shouldn't we be able to freely have energy security without having to think about those things in a first world country?
We should, and we should have been building a lot more domestic energy generation capacity 20 years ago. But we are where we are now, and frankly, we can't. It would be lovely to allow everyone to fling open their windows and turn up their heating to the highest possible bit and just live in that world of abundance and luxury. But sadly, that's not where we are. Putin has turned off the taps, and that means that even though we get very little of our gas from Russia, all the countries that do get their gas from Russia now have to get it from Norway, now have to get it from Qatar, and that means that the prices for us and our gas have gone up too because of the way that the global market works. So fundamentally, the UK is very reliant on gas, more so than just about any European country, actually, in terms of how we heat our pretty leaky Victorian-era homes. And when we're dealing with the consequences of that, there have got to be some short-term belt-tightening measures. Now, the question is, how are those going to be applied? Looking at what Liz Truss has been hinting at, that means direct support for the most vulnerable and perhaps not so much support for those who are better off. Potentially, the people who can afford to do more might be asked to do more in and of themselves, and that might be difficult politically, but perhaps right morally.
And just a quick question, zooming out a little bit. I mean, do you think that this is now going to have quite fundamental implications from a geopolitical perspective? I mean, Peter Hitchens had a Mail on Sunday column saying that actually, what is going on in Ukraine is now potentially going to cause so much misery within the Western world. I mean, but Nadhim Zahawi and other senior figures in government have still committed to supporting Ukraine. I mean, do you worry, or is there any sense that this might shift as the prices increase so much?
Absolutely. This is exactly what Boris Johnson actually was speaking about last week in his surprise visit to Kyiv on Ukrainian Independence Day. Now, he was saying that sort of mindset that we should throw in the towel now for Ukraine, just make sure that everything can get back on, end these sanctions against Russia and hope that Putin stops there, that is wishful thinking, because the argument is that just as happened with Crimea, and actually as happened with Georgia as well, if the West says, OK, we're going to appease you, we're going to say, you can take this much of Ukraine, but you'll stop there, you promise, a couple of years later, of course he won't stop there. If the West is weak there, if the West bows to Putin's financial pressure, he's going to take more and more, and it won't stop at Ukraine.
Yes, well, Tom, thank you for that. Putin won't stop. I don't think we can be under any illusions that that's what he intends to do. Well, let's now speak to former Conservative advisor Claire Pearsall, who joins us now. Claire, I was interested in this massive amount of support, according to a YouGov poll, for amongst Tory voters, of all people, for energy to be nationalised. 47% would agree. What do you make of that?
This is a really, really surprising result, because as Conservatives, we are naturally against nationalising any kind of industry, especially utilities. But I can understand why people are now looking to that as a solution. When you take into account the amount of bonuses that have been paid, the amounts of money that you are talking about going to these top individuals, whilst pensioners, those with disabilities and those most vulnerable are going to have the choice of whether to turn on the lights or turn on their radiators or eat some food this winter, then I can see that this is an attractive option. How that runs long term is anybody's guess, because governments change, as we all know. There will be a general election. So what happens with that? Will it become more unionised? Will we look at more strikes? We only have to look at the past to see that nationalisation didn't always work in the best way. So I can see it's attractive, but I do worry that perhaps we're grasping at straws.
And Claire, I mean, but what do you think about that? I mean, should we kind of give up some of these ideological commitments to, Tory tax cut, Labour, nationalising, when we have a situation, a crisis effectively, which is so significant that maybe it is time to start rethinking what it means to be a Conservative. Maybe the most important thing is conserving people's livelihoods and making sure they have jobs and opportunity and security, rather than thinking about it solely in that tax cut versus tax rise kind of way. What do you think about that?
Well, I do think you're right. I think that we need to step away perhaps from what the traditional core values are, and we need to understand what part they have to play in the political makeup of today. Now, the world is a very different place. And Conservatives will always look back to Thatcher, because she is, for the majority of us, she is an idol. However, times really are different. People are facing many, many different struggles. The world is a very different place, with different conflicts going on and different spending requirements. So I do think it's going to require some really big thinking. But for both sides, whether you look to Labour at their values or whether you look to the Conservatives, it is a really big risk to alienate your core voter base. So I think it's going to take somebody pretty brave to come in and say, do you know what, we're going to nationalise. We're Conservatives, we're going to nationalise rail, utilities, water companies, whatever it might be. And also for Labour to say, do you know what, we're going to cut some taxes and we're going to be a little bit more conservative. It is a massive risk. And nobody seems to want to take that. But I do think that we need some creative thinking, because quite obviously the country cannot continue as it is going.
Yeah, and I just wondered, when you look at the polls at the moment in terms of voting intention, there's no doubt that Labour is very much ahead to varying degrees. Liz Truss could very well be the last Conservative Prime Minister we have for many more years to come when it comes to the next general election. Do you think that will be playing in her mind, and she'll be thinking, I really have to leave a legacy. I have, the weight of the Conservative Party's future on my shoulders, and I can't afford to just do little bits and bobs here and there, and I need to be, somewhat of a figure like that, so that people will really remember from huge change?
Yes, I mean, nobody goes into elections thinking they're going to lose. So it will weigh heavy on her mind that this is an incredibly difficult time. And when you look at how long each party is in power at any one point, you get to a natural point in the electoral cycle where the British public says, actually, no, we've seen enough of you, we'd like to go for somebody else. The legacy aspect, I think all prime ministers have that to an extent, and we've seen it over the last, couple of decades. Everybody wants to be remembered for something, and unfortunately, whoever takes over in a week's time will be remembered for a winter of discontent and an energy crisis. So what they do with this is really, really important going forward. I don't think that necessarily I would recommend that somebody looks towards what their legacy is going to be. What I would rather see is the next Prime Minister coming in and saying what's going to benefit the great British people. But these are really difficult arguments to have when everybody is in campaign mode, as they are at the moment. I think it's going to be really, really difficult. And I just want to see some more details coming out, because I think everybody right now is a little bit fed up of saying, well, OK, the detail will come later. Well, later is coming. We're coming into September. It is going to be autumn very, very soon. And people want answers quickly as to how much they're going to have left in their pocket after paying the extortionate prices for gas and electricity.
Yes, well, later is next Monday, when we're meant to find out who the new Prime Minister is, and they'll have to get cracking with the job of sorting this cost of living crisis ASAP. So there you go, Claire. So thank you for joining us. Always a pleasure. Former Conservative advisor there. Now, let's go to some of your views, because you have been sending in your opinions thick and fast. Do you?
Yes.
I'll start. On energy, Jane says, please stop talking about those on benefits that need help with heating. What about those working 40 hours a week on minimum wage, not any benefits? We need help too. We are forgotten always. And I think that's interesting because, was it it was Nadeem Zahawi, the Chancellor, who said a couple of days ago that even people on £40,000 a year, which is, of course, well above average wages, he said even those people will now be needing support because they will no longer be able to afford their energy bill. So
yeah, I think that's a really important point, and I actually think it is a really central point, and that's why the cost of living crisis has completely shot to the top of the political agenda, because it's not just affecting people at the bottom of society, it is affecting the middle income earners and to some extent people that are earning high. I mean, if you have a large house, seeing your bills go up by 400% is extortionate for many people, regardless of what your income is.
I do hate to be a cynic, but I think it is funny how, poor people have been struggling with these sorts of things for a long time, and suddenly, when it affects the middle classes, suddenly it's a big issue. Maybe that's a cynical perspective, but
I think there is definitely a point there, but I ultimately don't think that the energy crisis that has really not the responsibility of ordinary people should have to be paid for on the backs of working people. I think that's a very, very difficult situation that no politician will be able to avoid as the months go on.
Well, quickly, Jane says, help this winter should be carefully targeted. It's difficult to feel sorry for those who've spent a lot of money on a foreign holiday and then say they can't afford to heat or eat. I think it was interesting seeing those those contrasting images of, on one hand, airports packed, queues stretching miles, so to speak, and then you get the cost of living crisis. And I'm not saying that's a problem. I think people should deserve a holiday, and, maybe they've budgeted for that already for years and months. So I'm not saying people shouldn't be able to enjoy a holiday, but it's two very contrasting pictures, I think, those images were.
I think the point that you made when we had our political correspondent, Tom Harwood, on was a really important one in terms of, we should be able to use as much energy that we want in a country that is the fifth largest economy in the world. And the slogan used to be cheap, reliable and secure, but you don't hear that slogan anymore. Actually, what we're constantly being told is to use less, to do less, to restrict our lives. And actually, are we not allowed to, or should we not be enjoying the fruits of prosperity over the last few decades? And the now move is towards actually us living a much more reduced, more restricted life. And I think that that's a very, very sad reality that we are experiencing now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, get in touch with your views. Carry on getting in touch. gbviews@gbnews.uk. We'll get to more of those before the end of the show. But after the break, there's been a leaked letter from the International Trade Secretary, which has revealed that the government is no longer planning to use its Brexit trade deals to enforce human rights around the world. We'll be looking at that a bit later on, but here is a break first.
The UK is looking mostly dry and sunny, although a few showers will develop, mainly in the north. Let's take a look at the details. Well, it will be a largely sunny afternoon across the southwest, although a brisk easterly breeze will develop, especially over the moors and along the coast. Temperatures will be around the low 20s. Southeastern England and East Anglia will also see a keen breeze, which will bring in a fair bit of cloud off the North Sea. The north of Wales may see the odd shower this afternoon, but much of the country will be dry with the best of the sun in the west. The Midlands then will see a dry bank holiday afternoon, but there will be a fair bit of cloud around, especially in the east. Despite this, temperatures will remain in the low 20s. North East England is to have a rather cloudy afternoon with perhaps the odd spot of rain around. Pop over the Pennines though, as North West England will be dry with some sunshine. Western Scotland will also see some spells of sunshine this afternoon, but further east it will be cloudier. A few showers may also develop, especially over the higher ground. Northern Ireland then may also see the odd shower develop, but most will miss them and have a dry afternoon with some spells of sunshine. Temperatures here reaching 18 to 20 Celsius. Cloud will then melt away as we move towards the evening, but some showers will continue in the north, and that is how your weather is shaping up for this Bank Holiday Monday.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness, and then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Join me, Darren Grimes, for Real Britain every Saturday and Sunday from 2 p.m. A news hour that comes with a trigger warning. Scorching hot opinion with prominent guests saying the unsayable and a little bit of weekend fun thrown in. Unlike other broadcasters, I won't be forgetting what the B in our name stands for. So howie in for Real Britain Saturday and Sunday from 2 p.m.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
Good morning. It's 11:27, and this is To The Point with Inaya Falarin Iman and myself, Mercy Moroki, on GB News. We're live on your TV, online and radio.
And now, a leaked letter from the International Trade Secretary has revealed that the government is no longer planning to use its Brexit trade deal to spread and enforce human rights around the world.
Yes, well, the dramatic change comes as the UK is attempting to sign deals with Gulf countries, including Saudi Arabia, Bahrain and the United Arab Emirates, all renowned for their poor human rights records.
Yes, and with us now is former Brexit MEP Ben Habib. Thank you for joining us this morning, Ben. I mean, what do you make of this? Because when I was reading about this story, I was thinking, well, Britain has always had questionable relationships with different rogue regimes, so to speak, around the world. For example, our relationship with Bahrain is a long-standing one. So what's different about what is being said in this leaked report?
I mean, Saudi is a great example too, by the way, of a regime that, you know, has questionable human rights record. But I mean, I think the subject is a very nuanced, complex one, and I don't have the privilege of knowing precisely what lies behind the letter, but I hope that it's the government taking a more enlightened view of trade than it has in the past. You know, I think one of the problems the UK has had is that it has put its ideology, if you like, ahead of British national interests and refused to do trade deals with many developing countries. I don't think Saudi is a particularly good example, but many developing countries, Pakistan, for example, you know, without those sorts of countries improving their human rights. And that can be a double-edged sword, because what happens in the end is either you don't do a trade deal with that country, in which case the people of that country are worse off as a result. British people don't get the goods that they should be getting at the cost-effective prices that perhaps they could otherwise get them. And also that country doesn't develop. So it's not obvious that by requiring ideological improvement, if you like, in these countries before you trade with them, that is beneficial for everyone concerned. However, having said that, there are regimes with whom we need to be very careful when we trade. I think Saudi is a fantastic example to look at, because it's a country on which we are going to increasingly rely as this cost of living crisis unfolds, as the need for fuel becomes ever more prevalent, if you like, ever more important. And so I can see a bit of a move here towards pragmatism in the British national interest. And we just need to step very carefully as we go forward.
And this came after this story came after MPs raised concerns that the government had dropped the terms human rights and rule of law from a list of proposed objectives in talks for trade deals with the Gulf Cooperation Council. And they were saying, wait, hang on, are we not going to include human rights and rule of law as one of the criteria? Wasn't it just complete and utter wishful thinking to suggest that even if we had included human rights and rule of law as a condition for, signing trade deals, that these countries would have complied anyway? They're states in and of themselves, that they don't fall under our jurisdiction, so technically they can do whatever they like. Why are we always trying to impose our ideology on other countries?
Well, that's a brilliant question. You know, I've never really understood why we conflate trade and ideology. Human rights is a slightly different thing. I think that's fundamentally important. But I know that we have tried to use trade as well as aid, and perhaps aid is more justifiable, as a mechanism to export Western values, democracy, the way we see, with the way we think political systems should be set up and so on. And I think it's fraught with problems. And you take China, for example, that's a country that unashamedly puts its economic interests over and above any form of ideology. It has very strong domestic ideology, but it doesn't seek to export it when it does trade deals. So the Belt and Roads Initiative, for example, which is effectively China securing its international resources, has no human rights prerequisites in its dealings. And as a result, it has gained massive influence across a lot of the countries where we would like to have influence. And had we adopted perhaps a more China view of trade, we might now be in a position to impose our values and to require these countries to improve because they've become so much more reliant on us. Instead, what we found is that a lot of these countries have pivoted towards China. And so, it is a balance. It is trying to get things right without, without empowering and keeping in place dictators that are damaging to their own people's interests. But it's quite a nuanced, complex subject.
So I take your point about the fact that it is nuanced and complex, but I guess as a counter-argument, if we look, for example, you brought up China, but at the end of the Cold War, there was this belief that actually if we brought China into the economic fold, that would lead them to liberalise internally. A similar thing with Russia. We've had many of these countries signing deals with Russia for decades in relation to energy, and that hasn't improved them when it comes to their human rights record and so on. And actually it's meant that many of these countries have a lever over us because we then depend on them economically. Similar with countries in the Gulf that we mentioned in the introduction. So in a sense, isn't it better to marginalise and isolate these countries? Because if we sign trade deals with them, then we end up being dependent on them economically in spite of their catastrophic human rights record.
Yeah, well, I think it's very important to draw a distinction between countries like Russia and China, which are, super economic. Well, Russia less so, but China is, a significant economic machine in its own right. To draw a distinction between them, developing countries, and third world countries. And I think we've got to be much more flexible and enlightened in our approach with developing and third world countries. With China and Russia, we've learnt very expensively recently the cost of trading with them without them adopting some of our values. And, I think it was Mercy who said at the outset that even if we put those kind of prerequisites into trade deals, probably they'd be ignored. And,
yeah, absolutely. Sorry to interrupt you. We do have to leave it there for now. I'm sure we'll have you back another time, Ben Habib. Thank you so much for joining us today. Former Brexit Party MEP. Now, we are going to take a short break, and afterwards we'll be discussing why many British universities are decolonising their curriculum by dropping literature from writers like Chaucer and Shakespeare from their curriculum. But before all of that, here's a look at this morning's news headlines.
Good morning. It's 11:34. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date on GB News. NASA is making its final preparations ahead of a planned launch of its new moon rocket later today. It's an unmanned rocket. It's the world's most powerful to date. It's going to propel a test capsule called Orion far from Earth into the moon's orbit. Well, we can have a look at the preparations underway now. It's the Artemis 1 mission. It's aiming to prove that people can go to the moon for longer and more sustainably than ever before. The rocket's scheduled to take off from the Kennedy Space Centre shortly after 1:30 this afternoon. Of course, we'll bring it to you live here on GB News. Liz Truss's campaign says she favours targeted support to ease the cost of living crisis rather than help for all. However, the Tory leadership candidate says she isn't ruling anything out as the contest enters its final week. The Environment Minister and Team Rishi supporter, Victoria Prentice, told us the former Chancellor believes help should go to those who need it the most.
Rishi's plan is very much to target that help at the most vulnerable households. So, for example, pensioner households or people with disabilities or households on the lowest incomes. And I think that's the right way to go. I know this is hard for everybody, but for some people it's really hard and we need to help them get through it.
The Royal Navy's largest warship has broken down overnight off the south coast of the UK shortly after it embarked for exercises in the US. It's HMS Prince of Wales that left from Portsmouth Naval Base on Saturday when a mechanical issue occurred. The 65,000-ton vessel's departure had already been delayed on Friday because of a technical issue. The government's confirmed Gibraltar's status as a city more than 180 years after it was first bestowed the title by Queen Victoria. Well, the title was originally awarded then in 1842. It was then left off the official list of recognised cities. Now, a newly published record confirms Gibraltar's inclusion. The Prime Minister Boris Johnson describes the decision as a huge accolade to its rich history and dynamism. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.169 and €1.172. The price of gold currently stands at £1,475 and 79 pence per ounce.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for physical investment.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning, it's 11:39 and you're watching and listening to The Point with Inaya Falarin Iman and myself, Mercy Moroki on GB News. We're live on your TV, online and radio, as always.
Yes, and now an interesting story. Universities are seeking to, quote, decolonise the curriculum and liberate courses from the inequities of so-called white, Western and Eurocentric knowledge.
Yes, well, students at university this autumn may find that their modules will not be including the likes of Geoffrey Chaucer, Jane Austen or Shakespeare's sonnets. But is this really decolonising the curriculum and setting students up for a better future, or are we actually just censoring and erasing history?
Well, let's talk to academic and author Dr. Nikos Soterakopoulos. Should we decolonise the curriculum? In fact, before you even answer that question, isn't it quite patronising, first and foremost, this idea that these great works of literature, which has essentially formed the basis of Western civilization, cannot be engaged with critically from ethnic minority students or poorer students? What is this all about?
You're right, Inaya, it's so patronizing. It's saying people that you cannot appreciate the best that culture has to offer And therefore, we have to give you something else which is not going to be so white European or whatever this means. So we need to ask two questions. The first question is, why do you want to remove Shakespeare? Is it because Shakespeare is not good? Is it because Shakespeare does not capture the tragedy or the brilliance of human life at its peak? If this is the case, then yes, I'm ready to discuss, quote, decolonizing the curriculum. But you will notice that most of the times they are not making an argument based on merit. They are not telling you that, let's say, Jane Austen is not good, but we want to bring someone which is better. They make an argument based on what is the identity of the author. And I'm sorry to say this, but this is racist. This is the definition of racist. You judge Shakespeare or whoever else, not based on what they have written, but based on their color of their skin or based on their identity. So we have to be very clear that not only this is patronizing towards students because it's denying them the best that the world of literature or of arts has to offer, but it also perpetuates the racism that supposedly it wants to remove. So we shouldn't say, well, it has some good intentions, but there are some bad parts. No, the intentions to begin with are to be questioned because I don't see them as good intentions.
Yeah, and it's almost a form of sort of soft cultural segregation because it's saying, well, if you're ethnic minority, you can only appreciate ethnic minority literature, and if you're white, then fine, you can appreciate white literature. It's very odd. There'll be people who say, including, I'm sure, people who are making these decisions, that what we're doing is exposing students to a wider array of intellects. You know, they'll say people are well aware of the works of Shakespeare, and actually what we're doing is broadening their understanding and knowledge of other, writers and intellects. What would you say to that?
Well, I would accept this if the order of this happening was starting from, there is this author that is not included and we need to include that author, let's say from the developing world, and then we might see who we want to remove. But what you will notice is they start with who is to be removed. They start by saying we need to remove Shakespeare or Jane Austen, and then they try to figure out who to include. Let me tell you a very quick story from a diversifying curriculum meeting. We were in a former university where I used to work, and we thought we need to add non-European sociologists and ask a simple question. Who are these non-European sociologists we need to ask? Do you know them? And then people were on their phones Googling the non-European sociologists. They didn't know who they wanted to include. So they don't start by saying there are these good, great thinkers that we have excluded and we want to include them. They start by saying we have to exclude the classics because they're classics, because they're white Europeans or whatever. And then they make up stories about people who have been excluded. And again, there might be indeed the case that there are some very good thinkers or writers that have been excluded because we don't know enough about them. But then they need to, the people who want to diversify the curriculum, they need to make a case based on merit, not based on what is the identity of the author or even worse, the skin color of the author.
I think many of our viewers will agree with you, but what do you think about the actual effect this will have on students? Because a lot of the time, we talk about this and it's like political correctness gone mad and all these types of things. And we're like, these leaders of literature and the arts, they're just woke and all these types of phrases. But actually this has a real effect on students. They become disconnected to their historical inheritance, essentially. It reduces the richness of the courses that they are doing. They're not challenged, they're not criticised. It means that you create a generation of students that are insulated from offence, insulated from difficult and challenging and great ideas. What do you think about the actual effect this has on students?
Well, the actual effect is, first of all, it teaches them to think in the wrong way. It teaches them that the way we understand the world is not through our individual mind, but it's through the chromosomes or the color of our skin. So it already sets them for failure. But also, it denies to them the best that the world has to offer. Literature is not just something which is sterile and dry. Literature should inspire. Literature should tell you this is what human experience can be. This is what, think about Shakespeare, think about Romeo and Juliet, the richness of emotions, the power of love, the tragedy of unrequited love. Why should students be denied these things in the name of this ideology which tells them you are not clever enough to understand Shakespeare and we're going to give you something inferior because we don't consider you that you will be able to understand Shakespeare. So we're setting up students for failure and we're denying them the immense pleasure of great literature, which can come from men, from women, from people from all over the world. But again, the point is we should be able to judge. Is this a good piece of art? Is this a good piece of work? Not who wrote it and what is their identity or their chromosome or their DNA.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Nikos Sotirakopoulos, for your compelling case defending the great works within literature. And, I think both of us probably agree that this decolonising the curriculum movement is more harmful than good. And it is very frustrating because it's often done in the names of ethnic minority people.
Yeah.
But oftentimes the ethnic minority people that say, actually, we want to engage with Shakespeare, we want to respect and admire these great works of literature, and they're not white or Western, they're actually humanities great works, they're universal, are delegitimised and ignored.
Yeah, and even if they are even if they are white and Western, and even if some of them, which some of them do include things we would now deem racist, why should that be censored? That's still a part of history that if we're going to understand history in the broadest sense and the richest sense, then surely we still need to include all of those things. You can't just pretend it didn't happen. And it's very offensive for these academics to mollycoddle ethnic minorities and say, we feel so sorry for you, you're going to be so offended by this, and we're just going to give you material that isn't going to be offensive.
And I just think it just narrows the horizon of these young people. I mean, Shakespeare talks about love, beauty, tragedy. When I've seen some of the works that have replaced him, it talks about, Afro hair and things like that, and which is interesting. It can be good or to talk about, but the idea that is kind of comparative in relation to a very specific experience versus some of these human experiences that transcend those divides is just not comparing. So you're just narrowing those kids' horizons.
Well, yeah. I probably have more in common than some white old lady somewhere than some of these people I was seeing at Carnival, to be honest. There you go. But anyway, on that note, we're going to go to Scotland, where waste and cleaning workers have they did walk out on August the 18th as part of their pay protest with local government and are due to return to work tomorrow. But the strikes are now spreading across Scotland's councils.
The leader of Edinburgh Council has said the mountains of rubbish on the city streets has brought into sharp focus the value of its waste and cleaning workers. Our Scotland reporter Davy Donaldson is in Edinburgh for us today. Good morning. Tell us a bit more about what's going on, Davy.
Yeah, well, as you can see here, this is day 12 of the strike, so there's lots and lots of rubbish. I'm just going to get out of the way so you can actually see some of it. It really is piling up, and this is just one area across the city. You can imagine how bad this is with the Edinburgh Fringe Festival on, and obviously this is right across the city centre that this is happening as well. So really, really difficult. The smell, I can tell you, is overwhelming. It's overpowering, and people really, quite frankly, have had enough. They're sick of it. It looks terrible. We've got Scotland's capital looking absolutely shocking while the Fringe is on, which is not great for tourism. There is some light at the end of the tunnel though, because COSLA, the local authority umbrella, have met with unions. There is an offer on the table to unions. I understand that's just been made within the last hour, so we're still waiting to see what the terms of that pay offer is. Presumably it's improved from the 5% that was on the table before. We'll find out later exactly what that is. Now it's up to unions to mull that over and decide whether they're going to ballot members about that, and that's going to take some time as well. In the meantime, as you said, the strikes are spreading across the country. We're hoping that that can be averted and we don't see scenes across the rest of Scotland like we've seen across Edinburgh in the last 12 days.
Well, David, thanks for bringing us that report. It looks absolutely horrific, the level of rubbish that's piled up there, and I hope the people of Scotland do get it cleaned up sooner rather than later.
I mean, just a quick point on this. I mean, during the pandemic, we were told about the essential workers and how important they were to the continuing of the country, which I very much agree with. And as soon as we've had this cost of living crisis, many of these essential workers who are asking for increased pay, to meet the demands that this cost of living crisis is facing, are seeing a brick wall essentially faced to them. I think that's very sad after what happened during the pandemic.
Yeah, well, there's not enough money to go around. I think that's might be the problem. Not enough taxpayer dollars, pounds to go around. But now from Edinburgh, the Ould Lammas Fair is one of the oldest events of its kind in Britain, and it's back after years of the pandemic restrictions. Well, we're going to go to Northern Ireland, where our reporter Dougie Beattie has been in Ballycastle over the weekend to take a look at the opening day.
It's been running from the 1700s, and after 3 years' absence, the Lammas Fair returns with some modern twists. A fair that saw the end of the harvest and gave those in agriculture a chance to trade workers, animals and goods. It brought financial rewards to the area, and Mayor Ivor Wallace is sure that it still does.
It brings millions to the local economy, Dougie. I mean, it's so important for this area. You know, not only for the local traders, but far wider than that. There's people coming, they stay in the local area, so the Causeway Coast and Glens, they're staying in Portrush, Portstewart, Coleraine, they're travelling into Ballycastle. As well as that, just the local traders, the food suppliers, the food wholesalers, right down then to the vendors who will be here selling their wares at the fair.
Although foreign travellers are returning, it seems to be those who stayed at home during the pandemic that are helping local business.
There's a lot of people who maybe for the first time done staycations and they didn't realise what they had on their doorstep, and now they're coming back again and again. Foreign travel has certainly started to come back as well. There's quite a lot of Americans about again, and they're the ones that seem to spend £1. So yeah, I think this area has done fairly well.
The fair now stretches over 4 days, and day one was all about horse trading, with animals being paraded through the town, then raced on the beach. And Joan Laverty has introduced us to her special friend.
Oh, the Lammas Fair is great. Great for Ballycastle town. This is Albert. He's a big Belgian draft. He's 13 years old. And everybody we've been talking to today wants him to win.
It is hard not to see the beauty of the Antrim coast, but as the summer comes to an end, we will await to see how many events give the public purse a worthwhile return. Dougie Beattie, GB News, Ballycastle.
Well, we can now go to our Northern Ireland reporter, Dougie Beattie, who joins us now. Dougie, just tell us a bit about what the atmosphere is like there at the moment.
Well, we talked about the public purse and returns for pounds. I can assure you that it is a great atmosphere. There are thousands of people here, and if they all spent £1, that public purse, it would be well returned. The Lammas Fair means a lot to me. It meant these were the last couple of days of your summer holidays. I used to travel here with my grandmother, and you know, you always knew that school was coming in the next few days. It also does quite marvellous food. Two things in particular: yellow man, that is rock basically, and of course seaweed, dulles, which is quite delicious actually. And the town itself is very much alive. It needs this. All these seaside towns need their events, and Ballycastle is no different from what is happening. The bars, the restaurants, even the little shops, the market stalls are all very much bunged. They're selling a lot of stuff, and I'm so glad to be here. And the weather has actually held out.
Well, Dougie, thank you. The weather looks lovely over there, and the atmosphere does look fantastic. So hope you can get a chance to enjoy yourself while the weather's nice. Dougie Beattie there from Northern Ireland. Let's finish off the show with some of your views, shall we? Ruby has said this on nationalisation. She says to nationalise utility firms would cost billions, if not trillions, and no guarantee service will improve after government cannot even run their own offices. The rise in energy prices is affecting not just the UK or Europe, but many other countries too. So she doesn't think nationalisation is the solution at all.
Yeah, so many people disagreeing with the move to decolonise the curriculum. Shirley has said, surely the link between Shakespeare's writing and how it was influenced because of the Elizabethan period he was writing in should be enough to make these people realise that he was an integral part of this country's history. That is, I mean, that's a very important point, because actually a lot of the time when you have the decolonising the curriculum, they actually are bringing in American authors, and oftentimes they're actually replacing the individuals and figures that were central to British history in favour of an Americanised narrative.
Yeah, that's right. Well, thank you for getting all your views in today. It is it from us here at To The Point, but we will be back tomorrow. But don't go away, because up next is The Briefing with Gloria De Piero. See you tomorrow.
The UK is looking mostly dry and sunny, although a few showers will develop, mainly in the north. Let's take a look at the details. When it will be a largely sunny afternoon across the southwest, although a brisk easterly breeze will develop, especially over the moors and along the coast. Temperatures will be around the low 20s. Southeastern England and East Anglia will also see a keen breeze, which will bring in a fair bit of cloud off the North Sea. The north of Wales may see the odd shower this afternoon, but much of the country will be dry with the best of the sun in the west. The Midlands then will see a dry bank holiday afternoon, but there will be a fair bit of cloud around, especially in the east. Despite this, temperatures will remain in the low 20s. North East England is to have a rather cloudy afternoon with perhaps the odd spot of rain around. Hop over the Pennines though, as North West England will be dry with some sunshine. Western Scotland will also see some spells of sunshine this afternoon, but further east it will be cloudier. A few showers may also develop, especially over the higher ground. Northern Ireland then may also see the odd shower develop, but most will miss them and have a dry afternoon with some spells of sunshine. Temperatures here reaching 18 to 20 Celsius. Cloud will then melt away as we move towards the evening, but some showers will continue in the north, and that is how your weather is shaping up for this Bank Holiday Monday.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness.